All right, so welcome everybody. We're going to get started in just a minute for the Teach for LA virtual workshop series. We're so glad you've joined us. Feel free to put information into the chat if you would like, but we are going to follow up with you to get you certificates if that's what you need. We will share the slides with you as well in the chat. So we'll take care of that kind of housekeeping at the end. So thank you for joining us. We'll get started in just a moment. Good morning, and good afternoon, that's right. So can you give me a thumbs up if you're seeing the screen that says, how do you become a teacher who can teach in elementary and secondary? Awesome, just want to make sure everything is working, and we're going to get started in just a moment. So we are here from Long Beach City College and Cal State Long Beach. So go Beach. I get to present with Kit from Cal State Long Beach today. I'm so pleased. My name is Megan Kaplinsky, professor and teacher prep coordinator at Long Beach City College. And Kit, would you like to introduce yourself and say hi?
Hello, everybody. It's so nice to be here. My name is Kit Van Wyk, and I am the Assistant Director of the Credential Center at Cal State University, Long Beach.
So today, yes, welcome everyone. So we're so happy to get to talk to you today about becoming a teacher who can teach in elementary and secondary classrooms, because adding authorizations and credentials is easier than you might think. And the very cool thing here is that we're going to go into a lot of details, and we will share the slides with you in the chat soon. So you don't have to take a lot of notes, and we'll also address your issues, or if you're interested to get a certificate at the very end. And we'll have Q&As, pauses throughout the presentation. So if we miss your information in the chat, we will have opportunities to go and address those questions. So let's go ahead and get started. Today, we hope to bust some myths, including these and others that might come up. So is it true that you have to complete a full credential program twice to teach elementary school and middle school? Does it really take years to add a credential or authorization? Is the only way to add a credential to pass a CSULB exam? And do you really have to officially minor in something in order to get enough units to add that to your credential? No, the answer is it's easier than you think. It takes less time than you might think as well. So we're going to go ahead, and in today's presentation, we're going to cover some basic nutshells and definitions, like what and who are the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing? What exactly are credentials and added authorizations? Then we'll talk about what pathways you're taking to education and teaching, because there's so many entry points and options and pathways in the field. We'll go into the details about authorizations and credentials. We'll zoom in especially to math and science, to high needs areas in California especially, and we'll talk about special education as well. So we're looking forward to going through this with you. The slides will be shared in the chat, and the recording is going to be posted online. So you will have that information soon. So Kit, can you confirm that it's recording? I don't have the little dot in my view. Yes, it says so. Perfect.
Yes, it's recording.
Thank you so much. So I'll hand it over to Kit to start with some explanations about the CCTC.
Hello again, everybody. So we will start, like Megan said, just letting you know who the commission is. Here in California, we have the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing. They are the educational governing board for the state of Credentialing. Each state has their own agency that provides approval for teacher certification programs, helps teachers with certification, out-of-state teachers. So they are responsible for approving credential programs across the state of California. They issue credentials and permits. They are an excellent resource, and we work directly with them to ensure that when we give a credential, that we are following Commission on Teacher Credentialing policies and procedures. So they have lots of resources on their website as well. we will go into, talk a little bit about, here's a little bit of information about what is a credential and what is an authorization. Credentials are a document that you earn to be able to teach in a California public school. The credential itself authorizes you to be the teacher of record in that specific classroom. To earn a credential, you are required to complete a commission-approved credential program. Authorizations are slightly different in that your credential includes an authorization, but we also chat about added authorizations. Added authorizations are additional subjects that you can add on to your credential, whether it's a multiple subject or a single subject credential. You can add on an authorization. Doesn't necessarily require completion of a full second program, and we will go into a little more detail about that.
So let's get started thinking about who's in the room. And we'll start with thinking about all the different pathways to teaching. So a lot of you are here because you're in already the field in preschool, or you're interested in those early childhood settings. Give me a thumbs up if you are in or interested in that early childhood. All right, we also have a lot of teachers that kind of are interested in elementary, maybe have a preference for those TK to grade 2 or 3 primary grades or upper elementary. Give us a thumbs up if you're considering elementary school. All right, and then secondary education means your middle and high school ages. Anyone brave going into middle school, secondary? Special education, all of these pathways for elementary, secondary, and special education require a teacher preparation program that grants a credential. So like Kit shared, you're going to get something from the California CTC that grants you a credential. And for preschool, they're granting permits for you, right, at the different levels of teaching. Now, adult education is another pathway to teaching, and it might include a teacher prep program, and it might not. Now, a lot of you are thinking about, one of these paths, and you gave a thumbs up. And it's really important to realize that you can kind of do a combo or prepare yourself for a variety of these. So we're going to talk about how that works. Here's a little more information, and the slides are now in the chat. So you don't have to take a lot of notes on this, and just kind of try to absorb this introductory information. So in preschool, you're earning permits, right? Early childhood has a lot of bachelor's degrees. At the university level and at the community college level, you might earn an AA degree and a lot of certificates and permits as you move up the ladder, right? Now, elementary, you need that credentialing program. So there's a lot of ways this could look. Maybe you're a liberal studies bachelor's major, or you're at the community college on our AAT elementary teacher ed, and you're working towards a liberal studies bachelor's degree. Now, other students want to kind of get more bang for their buck, and they're in programs such as an urban dual credential. It's like the liberal studies degree, and it adds a special education option. And there's a lot of other bachelor's degrees. I myself have a bachelor's in sociology, and I, proved through exams. Now it's the CSET, but it used to be a different one. And you can still enter the elementary or other fields with a different bachelor's degree. Now, secondary teachers get to teach middle and high school, and they're going to complete a teacher preparation program, and they most commonly earn a bachelor's in the area they want to teach. So any guesses here? What's the bachelor's of math teachers probably going to earn? I'm looking in the chat. Anyone unmuting? What are they going to do? That math teacher is probably going to get a bachelor's in, thank you, Danielle, mathematics, right? So for secondary, middle, or high school, we mean you're going to probably get the bachelor's degree in the subject you want to teach, and or take CSET exams so that you can prove that you have that content mastery. So for special education, there's currently mild, moderate, and extensive support type pathways, and you're going to earn a bachelor's degree and take exams. Maybe there's a waiver in here for you. And in adult education, it's going to be basically a bachelor's degree. So I'm curious, you've already kind of started to do those thumbs up, but what's your main pathway? Go ahead and type in the chat: early childhood, elementary, middle or high school, special education, adult ed, or a combination? Can you teach math if you have a bachelor's in mechanical engineering? So you're going to probably need to take the C sets in mathematics for that question, because this engineering is a little different than the requirements that the CTC provides to show that you are able to teach math. And we'll go into how that could look in a little bit. I'm seeing a lot of special education, early childhood. I see elementary, awesome, adults, wonderful. Spanish, fantastic. So we have some language in here for secondary. Excellent. Now, some of you are undecided and maybe you haven't typed anything in the chat, and some of you want a combination. So now I want you to think about what could the other area that you might want to focus on be? Because in order to boost your marketability, you're going to need to possibly, identify early on what are the areas that you might want to combine together. And then you'll be able to pay attention in this presentation to the parts that speak most to you. So kind of prepare yourself with thinking, this is my main focus, say elementary, but I also want to teach TK and possibly want to also go into early childhood. All right, so today we're going to jump in, like I said, to talk about all these kinds of things. Sorry, wrong scroll. So we're going to start with thinking about adding authorizations. So Kit.
Great, thank you. And I love seeing all of your options pop up along the side. That is so exciting. It's so great to see all the different options and areas that you are all interested in teaching. So as Megan said, I'm going to chat here, give you some basic information about adding authorizations to your credentials. This would be if you have a multiple subject credential, which is your elementary, or you have a single subject credential, which is your middle school, high school setting. You can add additional areas onto your credential, and it basically would show your future employer, your district, that you have an expertise in an additional area other than what you are currently credentialed in. So it definitely opens up more job opportunities. We do always suggest that if you're planning to add an authorization, make sure it's a subject that you're willing to teach. Sometimes you could be an expert in a subject and maybe you really don't want to teach it. If you have an extra authorization on your credential, they kind of look like a minor maybe on your credential. If you have additional subjects on your credentials, the district may ask you to teach that. So again, you want to make sure that you are interested in that subject as well. When we chat about added authorizations as well, it's important to know that there are for the most part, these are not approved programs. It's based on the amount of units that you've completed as an undergrad, or you've taken courses as a post-grad student. Sometimes we have a lot of students that go to a junior college to take additional classes to earn these types of authorizations. So there's some pathways for that. The first type we're going to chat about is what we call a supplementary authorization. These have been around for a very long time, and they can be added to a multiple or a single subject credential. They're what we would call they're traditionally known as a middle school authorization. And like I mentioned, it's courses that you could use courses for this authorization that you've taken as an undergrad, as part of your bachelor's degree or higher. The catch is that courses do have to be college level. So for math, for example, so say you're an elementary teacher and you want to add a math authorization, and you took intermediate algebra at Long Beach City College, that class would not count because that course is not considered college level. It has to be college level coursework, and you have to have a C or better. When we look at adding authorizations to your credentials, and you're doing this based on units that you've taken, you have to have a minimum of 20 semester units. And there's specific subjects that have to be covered, specific content areas within an authorization. So for example, here we have introductory social science. So we have a lot of elementary teachers who like to add on this introductory social science, which would mean you have a multiple subject credential, you add on an authorization in introductory social science, which you could then teach that subject in a middle school. When we look at the subjects that have to be covered within those 20 semester units, you'll see there The commission requires that you have at least one course in California history, US government, world history, and geography. And you'll see there's many options. There's lots of subjects that you can add a supplementary authorization onto your credential as well. So there's intro art, business, computer science. Computer science is a big one right now. We have a lot of teachers coming back to add on computer science authorizations as well.
Sorry, I'm adding things to the chat and it looks like it changed what was on my screen. Trying to address questions there, sorry. Do you need the next slide?
Yes, I'm ready. Excuse me. What can I take at a community college or university undergrad? So lower division classes. So this is, we have a lot of students who come through our programs, and this speaks directly, you know, for community college students, you can transfer your units obviously over to your university. If you can only transfer 70 units or up to 70 units. Sometimes we have students who have more than that. And if the course did not transfer, that course, we can still use a course towards an authorization. It's something that the commission or a credential analyst, once you get to that point, can assist you with in reviewing transcripts to see how close you are to meeting requirements for an authorization. So when would a candidate or a teacher apply to earn this supplementary authorization? First and foremost, you have to make sure you're either eligible for your teaching credential or that you already have a valid credential. So we currently have, for example, we have candidates in our credential program this semester who are getting ready to apply, and some candidates will be adding a supplementary authorization onto their credentials when we recommend them for their credentials in June. We have a lot of teachers who are out in the field and teaching and find out there is a specific grade they want to teach or a subject that they want to teach, or the district has said, hey, we'd love for you to teach this English course. Can you go get an authorization in English for middle school? And they do that. They will go out and earn the extra classes. As long as you have a valid credential, the commission allows you to add authorizations onto your credential. This is a big deal for our candidates. When you get a multiple subject or a single subject credential, those are both considered general education credentials. And the Commission on Teacher Credentialing does not require that you do a full second program if you want another credential. So this slide specifically speaks to our multiple subject or elementary teachers. If you decide you would like to obtain a single subject credential, you don't have to complete a second credential program. You just have to make sure you have a valid multiple subject teaching credential. And right now, the commission requires you to earn a single subject credential. You have to complete subject matter. So if you want an English credential, a single subject credential in English, you have to meet subject matter in that area. And then you take an additional course. It's a single subject course in how to teach English. And then it's an application and fee to the commission.
So I'll take a second to kind of give a story for this. So for myself, I majored in sociology. I didn't take the traditional path of liberal studies BA to become an elementary teacher. And when I became an elementary teacher, there was actually a bunch of layoffs, after I was a teacher for quite a long time. So I thought to myself, how do I make myself more marketable or increase the opportunities for myself to stay in my district? So as an elementary teacher, I wanted to think about an area of need. So I thought, adding science would be fantastic. I could get into middle or high school in what Kit described earlier as one of those middle school add-on credentials. And so I studied and passed CSET exams in science. And then when I decided to, add that on, what I was able to do is also take a bunch of units I had from my bachelor's of sociology and psychology minor and add those units on so that I could add that with my science credential. right? So I already had a credential. I just had to take some exams to show I knew the subject area. And I was able to add on that single subject credential plus authorizations to teach, child development, psychology, and sociology, which are high school electives. I did not have to go back to complete a whole new program for many years. I was able to just add on the single subject and authorizations to my elementary credential, and it was fantastic. So let's take a second. I know that there were some people that may be kind of processing this, and I want you to use yourself as an example right now. So earlier we asked you, what's your main pathway? And what is that second pathway that you might want to consider adding on? So anyone want to type in the chat what kind of add on or would you be most like leaning towards? So if you're elementary, tell us elementary plus math, or for me, it was elementary plus science, right? So I want to kind of see where everyone's at by looking in the chat. And I see some really great stuff about elementary plus math. That's really going to hit our areas of need in California. Deaf studies, amazing. So Kit's going to, at the end of this, share more about special education. Great question, Diana. Can community college professors, do they need a single subject credential? No. So actually, community colleges, that's a whole nother set of details for you. You would Google California Community College minimum qualifications. So please do Google that, because there's a whole list of what master's degrees you need. So for community colleges, you don't need a credential. You do need a master's degree in the discipline that you want to teach. So we would encourage you to consider community college, which will not take you on this credentialed pathway. Elementary in science, elementary in Spanish, these are wonderful. We're asking you to share in the chat if you missed it. What's your main focus and what would you consider adding? Elementary in history and English, these are great. I don't see as many that are a middle schooler teacher focus wanting to add elementary or special ed. Very cool. ECE wanting to add elementary. So Eileen, are you interested in adding TK? Because that's a special extra conversation. If you want to teach transitional kindergarten called TK, yes, Donna, Robert is my husband. If you want to teach TK, what you're going to need to do in California is get an elementary credential and take a certain amount of early childhood ed units so that you are going to provide developmentally appropriate practices in your TK classroom. It is not the same as other ages in elementary. Lots of people want to teach child development. Ooh, child development at the high school. You can do that. Sabrina, that's called a CTE credential, and they're thinking of adding that in Long Beach because their pathway went away. Oh, thank you, Donna. Do you teach math? Is that how you know, Robert? I'm looking in the chat. Adding adult ed, like a G. Say it again, Donna. Was that Donna? No. All right.
I said, yes, I teach math and I've taken some of his work and he's just amazing. So are you. This is so great.
Oh, thank you for the shout out. I will tell him he's right next door to me.
Oh God, that's great.
Thanks. So I love that people are talking about adding adult education on top of secondary. Side note, did you know, just like how I started, you can teach elementary or middle or high school, and then you can add community college. Yeah, it's the same retirement system in California. Sorry, Kit, for taking a side note here. So you can add community college because you have a master's degree. So again, none of these things of adding the second credential or authorization have to be right after or right with your first credential you ever get. So the fantastic thing is, if you start teaching and take a few years to really identify what second area do you want to add or specialize in, you can do it later. And we wanted to add to you, this idea for all of you in high school and community college and university right now. We want to give you this idea early and plant the seed, because you might want to take extra classes en route to your first credential, or go back to a community college in summer, or study for a CSULB exam now and have that plan ahead of time so you can get the most bang for your buck. So we're going to keep going now with our planned slides, and we'll be addressing the Q&A again just in a little bit. So I'll hand it back over to Kit to talk about middle school more and high school with those single subject credentials.
So we have teachers out there who earn a single subject credential, which is a middle school, high school focus. When you get a single subject credential, you get it in one specific subject. So for example, if you get a single subject credential in math, there are many subjects under the umbrella of math that you're allowed to teach. But if you decide you want to pursue an elementary credential, which candidates do sometimes decide that maybe the elementary is the focus that they want to head towards, you can get an elementary credential or a multiple subject credential without having to go through a full second program again. It's a matter of passing subject matter in that area. You have to prove that you are competent in that subject that you are planning to teach. It's a couple of additional courses from an elementary program and an additional examination of the RECA exam. So there are options to, again, it's another way of making yourself more marketable without having to do a complete second program. We have many single subject teachers who decide they want to add on additional full single subject areas. So when you earn a single subject credential from middle school, high school, if you earn a credential in English and now you decide you want to also add on social science, it is a matter of now meeting subject matter in that new area. So that is where the CSET becomes involved again. You take the CSET in that new subject, and it's an additional methods course in teaching that subject. It's another way. We have a lot of single subject teachers who come back and add additional areas onto their credential, again, to open up more options for them while they're in the classroom.
All right, so let's pause before we jump into a lot more detail about math and science. And we've had requests for the slides for people that got kicked off and are back on. So how do you become a teacher? Slides are now back in the chat for you. So let's pause and feel free to unmute or.
So Megan, you said that they're there, but I don't see them in the chat.
For me, I shared it for everyone at 11:26 most recently, and we can follow up. Give me a thumbs up if any of you were able to download the slides. Just curious. You see it? Good. I got some thumbs up. For those of you that didn't get it or couldn't open it, no problem. We can follow up at the end of the presentation and share where you can get the recording, as well as attach those slides for you. I know it's a lot of information and we didn't want you to have to take notes. Couldn't open it, no problem. Looks like some people can and some can't, so we'll follow up for you. And our emails will be at the end of this presentation, and we invite you to message it. Yes, you would download the PDF. It's in the chat and it's in there a few times, most recently at 11:26, but we'll make sure you get it. So aside from looking at the slides, before we jump into math and science, does anyone want to unmute? Because our chat has a lot of questions and we want to make sure we didn't miss anything at this point. So feel free to unmute or do a hand raise right now. What can we clarify so far?
Hi, I'm Geeta. I have a question about the child development permit and the credentials. Also, I have questions about the earning the credentials. So basically, I earned my bachelor's degree in India, and to apply for credentials, what do I have to do? So that was my first question. Do I have to write my English proficiency test? Because now I'm earning my units from early childhood education. So do I have to, can that be used as the English proficiency, or do I have to do any English proficiency test apart from the units that I'm doing right now? And what is the difference? So now I saw that if I get 24 units, in early childhood education, I can become a teacher for the kindergarten at least, right? So what is the difference between the permit and then the credentials that I'm going to be doing?
Well, I love that Keisha shared for us the child development permit matrix. So you can take a look at how to become an early childhood educator by looking there. And also, as for credential questions, since you already have a bachelor's, I can hand that off to Kit because Kit is working at the university level with folks that have already earned a bachelor's and are entering, as well as those who are transferring in or just getting started.
Yes, hi, thank you for your question. So it is definitely a little bit more of, there's a little bit more information there because, or a little more detail that's going to be needed, some individual advising that would be needed because you have a degree from out of the country. Candidates do have to have degrees evaluated by a commission on teacher credentialing approved agency. If you want to teach elementary or TK, you do have to have a teaching credential, which is different from the early childhood permit. An early childhood permit is for traditionally a preschool setting. So TK though can involve some of those units. So it is a combination. So it really just depends on which route you decide to do. If you really want to do preschool, then you're looking at a early childhood permit. TK on up requires a credential, but TK requires early childhood units. So it does get a little bit more complicated, really just depending on what level you really want to teach. I will, at the end of the session, I will provide my email address as well. So again, that's because that your specific situation will require a little bit more one-on-one advising.
Thank you. That would really help me. Thank you so
Great.
much.
You're welcome.
Great question in the chat coming in. What credentials required for TK? So to be a transitional kindergarten teacher, you will need to have an elementary teaching credential. And in addition, a certain number of early childhood education units. And that's because we need it to be a developmentally appropriate classroom that is different than kindergarten. So you'll want the elementary credential and you will want the units in early childhood. So for those of you thinking you want to teach TK, you may want to go through that elementary pathway or a child development major and eventually the elementary credential. There's so many great entry points in. Any other questions coming up? Feel free to unmute. Let's see, I see one in the chat. If we're doing an add-on for math versus the full math credential, can we teach any math course or only specific ones? We are going to jump right into that in the next section. It'll be great because you're going to get that answer in just a minute. Sabrina asks, does being a child development major conflict with the elementary or high school credential? Absolutely not, Sabrina. I was a sociology major and I added an elementary credential because it's a separate program. So imagine that you could do a BA pathway like sociology, child development, or liberal studies, and then separately you can apply to get on an elementary credential called the multiple subject credential path. It's post-baccalaureate degree. So you have no problem being almost any major and still you can become a teacher. I hope that answers your question, Sabrina. Great. Yeah, and it actually really prepares you for what you want. So here's a common myth we can bust right now. If you want to be an elementary teacher or any teacher, any degree is great. You need to get a credential after your bachelor's degree, okay? So you need both. Many students that know from the start they want to be an elementary teacher get the very common liberal studies bachelor's degree because that bachelor's degree prepares them for the content you teach children in TK to grade 5 and 6, okay? If you are a sociology major like I was, or a child development major in early childhood ed, that's a great bachelor's degree too. You will need to take exams to prove that you know the content that those liberal studies majors already got a degree in. So that means you'll take CSET exams to prove you know the content because your bachelor's was a different path. So students that know from the beginning they want to teach elementary often get liberal studies bachelor's because it's like the fast track and they don't need to take the CSET in our Cal State system, it's waived. All right, but sociology, child development, any other major, you're just going to need to take CSET exams. They're mostly recommended, Kaylin, to take the CSETs, you know, after you've transferred, you're at a university, or after, I believe. If that's right, Kit, let me know.
Yes, actually, yes, you would take the CSET. CSET, you have to have at least attempted when you're applying to the credential program. So what I would like to add as well is that, especially at Long Beach State, for example, if you wanted to teach in high school or middle school, and you know you want to teach math, for example, if you get a bachelor's degree in math education, that is another option as well. We have a few bachelor's degrees that are pathways to the credential program: math education, art education. We're hoping for science approval very soon. So there are options. We have English education, where if that's what you want to teach in a high school, that is a great route to pursue that bachelor's degree pathway, specifically at Long Beach, that would basically get you closer, one step closer to the single subject credential in English or art or math.
There are so many entry points. You can't really go wrong. The most important thing is to talk to your community college counselor. And now that you know that there's ways to add on, we'll get really detailed with math and science in a minute. You're going to be able to tell the counselor what you need. If you're at a Cal State, you're going to talk to your advisor. Tell them, hey, I want to be really marketable. I want to mostly teach this area and get this credential, but I also want to be able to flip or switch gears and meet whatever job openings are in my area. More questions are in the chat, and I do see Esmeralda's hand is up. Let's check the chat. I took child development in high school, really enjoyed it. If I want to teach child development in high school, what CSET is it? Well, I know that you're going to be needing to be looking into CTE credentials, and that's like a welding instructor at a high school or community college. They're going to earn a CTE credential or become a CTE educator. Let's see, can I take CSET anytime? I think we talked about that. It's usually towards the end of your bachelor's. Is there a credential or authorization that's always available? Well, here's the good news. California is like really advanced and progressive. If you get a credential in California, it's almost universally accepted. Teachers that move into California with an out-of-state credential often have to prove that theirs is equivalent or take additional coursework. So you're in a great spot if you complete in California. As for around the world, there are various things in each country, and I wouldn't be able to address that. Let's see, resources to study for CSETs. Maybe you all could share in the chat. What's a great resource for studying? Since many of us are on a pathway that waives the CSET, we're not going to need to study for it. However, those that are in another major that's not liberal studies for elementary, etc., you're going to need to take those exams. Oh, wonderful. CSET and home ec. Wonderful. Dual immersion. Maybe Kit can add a note about the BILA pathway right now for that dual immersion.
Yes, I was really excited to see so many of you populate into the chat, elementary and Spanish. So there is an option if it's dual immersion that you're looking at teaching. Obviously, especially in Long Beach, we have some dual immersion programs. You can, when you are going through a credential program, and those are specifically at an elementary school, there is an option. You get an elementary credential with a bilingual emphasis. So you can get a bilingual emphasis in Spanish, some of the Asian languages as well. That would allow, with a bilingual authorization on your elementary credential, it will allow you to teach in a dual immersion classroom or at a dual immersion school. When you apply to a elementary credential program, so you're in the bachelor's degree, you apply to the credential program, you apply as a bilingual emphasis candidate, there is an option to do in our program at Long Beach, the final semester is a semester of student teaching. If you are in the bilingual authorization pathway, you get to do your student teaching in a bilingual classroom, in a dual immersion classroom. So that is a great opportunity. But it's not the only option. We have a lot of candidates who get their elementary credentials and then come back later to add on a bilingual authorization to their credential if they want to teach in a dual immersion classroom. So that is an option.
Awesome. Esmeralda, what is your question?
You already answered it. Thank you.
Oh, great. Your hand is up. So we wanted to make sure
I have
you
a
were
quick
covered.
question.
Thank you. Sure.
I have a single subject credential. I was just wondering, you probably said, I just want to be clear that if I wanted to get an elementary add-on, I have to take 20 units or 27 units, and I cannot take them at a community college, correct?
No, if you have a, I'm not muted. If you have a single subject credential and you want to obtain a multiple subject credential, that is, you would need to pass the elementary CSET. That is not necessarily units per se. That's adding an authorization. This is different. When you're getting a multiple subject credential, you have to complete, you have to meet subject matter, and then, and Megan put the slide up here. You have to take a couple of extra courses. You have to take an elementary reading methods course, and an additional elementary methods course, and pass the RECA examination. So the commission, it's not necessarily going out and taking a units at a junior college. These courses you have to find from a university that has an approved multiple subject credential program. So for example, at Long Beach State, our elementary reading methods course is EDL 452. So our advising office would meet with you to determine, one, that you have a valid single subject credential, and then they would give you information on enrolling in these classes.
Okay, so I would just, so your school, Long Beach, does offer programs, so I could probably get in contact with them, see what course I might, and how would I take that? Do I need to enroll there, or is it through open enrollment? Like, how do you take classes if you already have a degree?
That's exactly it. If you already have a credential and you just need to come back and take a couple of courses from the elementary program, you do it through open enrollment, through university extension.
Okay.
So again, I can, at the end, I'll give you my email, and I will, if you can email me, I will direct you to the correct office to get more information on that.
Okay, that'd be perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, sorry, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I would like to know if like I'm interested in kind of like teaching kindergarten. So what would be my path? Because let's say like I'm in the like beginning, just like getting AA degree. So what would be the path for like because like it's lots of information, and I see like it's mostly for like other paths like middle school and like higher, and it's like super there's so many like ways you can do it, right? But for like kindergarten kids, it would be, I expect it to be like less classes, or less like not that scientifically, should I say, based.
So I would say that the preparation to teach elementary school is rigorous, no matter which path you take. And Keisha made a good point in the chat that it's really up to what you want to prepare for. So there's a few questions kind of aligning with part of yours. And if you want to teach kindergarten or early childhood, we have a question in the chat, for example, bachelor's in child development or liberal studies. It's up to you. So liberal studies is going to meet your subject matter requirements and waive you for the CSET at our universities in the Cal State system. However, child development or something like mind, sociology, psychology, they're going to prepare you for pedagogy and practices. Child development especially helps with developmentally appropriate practices, right? So it's up to your preference. Do you want to waive that exam more, or do you want to learn a pedagogy and a content area that really speaks to you? For me, I majored in sociology, minored in child development, later got a master's in human development and another master's in education and reading. I'm able to teach in science classrooms as well because I added a credential in science. And when I did that, I also added my sociology and psychology units from my bachelor's and master's degrees. This allowed me to teach child development and psychology and sociology in high school because I added the authorization when I went from being an elementary teacher to adding a credential and authorization. So I'm like an example of how you can really be super marketable by doing all these things. I did not have to go back and complete a whole program. But if I started again, I might have done even a different major. So really it's your preference. If your bachelor's is in elementary ed, called liberal studies in California, you're preparing for the subject matter you'll teach. You won't need the CSET at the Cal State. If you want though to be elementary or kindergarten teacher and be really zoned in to child development and appropriate practices, you're going to earn your child development degree. So it's all up to you, and there's no right or wrong answer. There's pros and cons.
So basically what happens is, let's say after college, once you go to university, you basically, because I know there's like going to be like lots of subtopics, right? So you just go with your bachelor to university, and then basically what you do is you pick like subtopic, right? Like which one you want to like continue with, because you need to kind of like specify which one, right? And then you just keep going with that, right?
Yes, you can go back and take additional units. I think it'll help us if we move on to math and science, and we do have another Q&A section coming up. I think this might kind of flesh it out. So if you're thinking math or science, great. If you want to imagine this being history or English, like some of you said you'd like to add, then just imagine it being like the same idea, but it'll be different types of classes. But Kit's going to really elaborate on using math and science as an example to help make this more solid.
Yes, and if I would like to add real quick, I know one of the questions is, you know, some individuals are interested in taking the CSET already, which is fabulous. There is a lot of preparation information on the exams online on the commission's website. There's details about the exams. I do want to just kind of give you a heads up though, that when you take the exam and once you pass it, the exams are only valid for 10 years. So depending on your time frame as to when you plan to enter a credential program, when do you plan to finish a credential program, you really want to make sure that your timing is going to align correctly. You can always, again, reach out to a credential advisor at the university or at the junior college, and they can provide some additional guidance as far as when the timing is correct to take that exam. All right, so I'm going to chat about math and science. This is definitely a continued hot topic because California continues to have a high need for math and science teachers. Now, there's lots of options. You can go straight into a math or a science credential. And as it states there, single subject credentials, that is what a lot of teachers just choose to go directly to that. There's foundational level math, foundational level science. You can get a full math, which includes calculus. There's 4 different science options as well, that is your focus. But you can also add on what we've chatted about before earlier was supplementary authorizations, where maybe you have a multiple subject credential or an elementary credential, and you want to add on a middle school authorization in introductory math or science, or you have a single subject credential, maybe in English. You can also add on a supplementary authorization in introductory math and science. These are, when we chat about supplementary authorizations, it's important to know that traditionally this is for teaching in grades 9 and below. And again, it can be added to a multiple or a single subject credential. Again, it's that you have to meet the 20 semester units of college level coursework, and you have to meet specific content areas. You have to make sure you have a college algebra class, a geometry course, a real numbers course. If you have, maybe you have already 15 units of calculus. Calculus courses actually cover all of those areas, so you would already meet the requirement that way. There are a few different options and pathways to that. If you wanted introductory science, you do have to have, again, a minimum of 20 semester units, but you do have to have a course in biology, chemistry, geosciences, and physics, and have a lab, and have a sequence of courses in at least 2 of the areas. It gets a little complicated, but again, that's something we can advise on if you are looking to do something like that. There's 2 options for math in the single subject credential world. There is a foundational level math credential, which requires the CSET and foundational math or complete a waiver program. And then a methods course in teaching math. We call them methods courses. When you're in a credential program, an approved CTC credential program, you take what we call methods courses. They are methods in teaching your subject. It's part of an approved program. You have to take a course in how to teach your subject. in addition to the rest of your teacher preparation program. So when you're adding a math credential, you have to take a methods course in teaching that subject. There is also a single subject math credential, which includes up to grade 12 and includes calculus. So if that is a focus, if that is something you'd like to teach and you'd like to teach up to 12th grade, you would earn a single subject math credential. You'd have to pass the CSAT in math or complete an approved waiver program. For example, the Long Beach State Math Education bachelor's degree. That bachelor's degree in math education allows you to meet the subject matter requirements, so you don't have to take the CSAT. And then again, you take an additional math methods course if you're doing it as an add-on. And again, here's a single subject information. This is, again, if you're adding it on. We do, again, have the full credential program. So if you decide this is what you want, you do complete a full credential program. This is if you already have a single subject credential or you have a multiple subject credential and you want to add on the science credentials, you have an option of a foundational level science credential or a full science credential. The foundational level science credential is for mostly your general, introductory, and integrated sciences. It only authorizes through grade 8. Or you can get a full single subject science credential add-on, or as your initial credential, or as an add-on. If you're doing it as an add-on, you can do it in biology, chemistry, geophysics. You pick a science focus and you pass the subject matter and you take an additional methods course in that area as well. We will change topics slightly just in regard to the Ed Specialist credential. So this is another area of high demand. California needs a lot of special education teachers. This is slightly different in that if you have a multiple subject credential, you're not just adding on an Ed Specialist credential, and same thing with single subject. It's not just an add-on. The commission does require that you complete a second program and do student teaching again. Currently, there's, at least at Long Beach State, we have 2 authorization options. We have mild, moderate, or moderate, severe. It does require, if you are adding on, if you already have a credential and you want to come to Long Beach State to add on or to obtain the Ed Specialist credential, it is a new application to the university and to the program. We do have a little bit of an expedited pathway, but you do still have to complete the full program. The commission is changing regulations in the special education world next year. So there's a lot of changes happening. Long Beach State will continue to have the program. When it comes to the special education authorizations, there are multiple options. And I noticed that somebody had put in their deaf studies. I think that was one of the options. There is an authorization in deaf studies in the special education world. Long Beach State won't have that program. We are only going to have the mild, moderate, and extensive needs currently when we transition to the new standards. But it is an option. So again, if you have a multiple or a single, that's an option. You can return and get an Ed Specialist credential. Or if special education is your passion, you can move straight into a special education credential program. We have at Long Beach State, we have our liberal studies degree. Now at Long Beach State, our liberal studies degree is a waiver program for the multiple subject CSAT. If you are in our liberal studies program, we also call it ITEP. We have, there is an option for you to earn your liberal studies degree and your multiple subject credential within the 4 years. There's also an option to obtain the multiple and the Ed Specialist credential within the 4 years. We're adding a new option soon where you're obtaining the education specialist credential and your bachelor's degree within 4 years. So just important to note, if you are looking for that CSAT waiver, the sooner you decide which your bachelor's degree pathway is, that is better. But you do, if you're planning, if it is your hope to waive the multiple subject CSAT for an elementary credential or for the special education credential. You do want to ensure that the program you're enrolling in, if you're pursuing the bachelor's degree in liberal studies, that is an approved waiver program. When we're looking at certification, the Commission on Teacher Credentialing does state you have to be enrolled in an approved program. So just some things to kind of keep in mind when you're searching for programs and what your pathway plans to be. Here is some reference information. The Commission on Teacher Credentialing has a ton of resources on their website for adding authorizations onto a multiple or a single subject credential. You can always contact our credential center. There is our email address, and we do have some information as well on our website that directs you to the Commission on Teacher Credentialing website. And you can always reach out to our office. We have credential analysts that monitor our email box, and they will get back to you with some details. We will also refer you over to our advising office. We have a separate program admissions office that can give you some information, but we are there, and our hope is to answer some questions, because the credential world, it can be complicated. There's a lot of options for you. So, definitely know you can reach out to us if you have any questions. And if we don't know how to answer the questions for you, because things are constantly changing, we can at least tell you how to ask the Commission on Teacher Credentialing and give you the right direction on how to get your questions answered.
Thank you, Kit. Such good information. And for those of you that feel like, wow, this is so much information, what do I need to know for right now, in case you're a high schooler that's here live or watching this as a recording, or you're a community college student or first years of college student? You just need to simply think, what kind of preparation do I prefer? If you're a secondary teacher, it's so most commonly the major that you would like to teach. However, if it is, and someone asked for email, it's on the screen, and I'll pop it in the chat. But so a math teacher is probably going to major in mathematics, right? But if you're an elementary teacher, there's so many entry points that are common and popular. Liberal studies, again, is going to likely have a CSAT exam waiver and prepares you for the content you need to teach. Something like sociology, psychology, communications, child development, it's going to prepare you for a way of thinking that's not necessarily directly tied to the content you teach, but is going to still prepare you in the way you see the world. When I became a sociology major, I didn't know I would teach, but I loved that I was a major other than liberal studies personally, because I saw the world with a sociological lens, and it's still something that contributes to the way I see the world today. So it's up to you what calls to you and what you would like. And there's not really a wrong answer. It's all about entering a credential program for the area you want to teach, and knowing early if you want to also take some extra math classes or science classes or history classes to add that to your credential. We just need you to leave having that in your mind, that, oh, it's not just any math class, I have to follow a set of rules of which kind, or it's not just any history classes, there's certain types that I need. So if that's all you've left with, the idea that you want to start thinking about your long-term pathway and the different things you might want to do to be more marketable, then just prepare yourself at that point. If you already have a credential in bachelor's, you also can consider how to re-enter for furthering your education. And we hope that you understand it's not necessarily 2 more years, 3 more years, 4 more years to start over with a brand new bachelor's degree. We have exams that can take the place of those degrees. Or you could start going back to school and collecting extra units like an unofficial minor, and that can also be added. So that's what we hope that you're leaving with. So we have just a couple minutes for any final questions, and we thank you for coming. Remember that the recording is going to be available. So if you'd like to kind of listen to this again with fresh eyes, this is the website. It's now in the chat and it's on our slide deck. where you can get all of this kind of information and listen again and kind of go to the links that we provide. All right. Please email Kit or myself for any additional questions that might come up, because we're happy to connect you if we don't have the answers. But any final questions or words that you'd like to share? Let's open it up one more time to the floor. All right, it looks like we will be following up with you later. Thank you again. For those that are interested to get a certificate because you're using this for fieldwork in your education course at a community college, please know that we will follow up an email. We have a lot of your info in the chat, but we'll probably just email everyone who attended. Please reply back if you need a certificate in the next, let's say, 2 or 3 days, so that we can get those out to those who need it. There's some good information in the chat as well. We know it's a lot of information. Come back to us when you're ready, watch the recording, and we hope to address your questions then. So for now, we hope you're inspired to think about being more marketable and how you can get so many different pathways and so many choices, and it's like a menu of options, right? So I hope that you feel open and inspired to think big and know that there's lots of different ways that'll work for you. So thank you so much and have a wonderful day.
Megan, can I ask you a question really quick?
Sure.
Sorry, about what you just said, that you guys would be emailing a certificate to us. Do you need us to email us? Sorry, let me rephrase that. Is that for every